Getting ready for our bachelor and bachelorette parties, I overheard my fiancé giggle. I invited my ex, hope he'll come. Because I spent the whole day shaving everywhere for him, lol. Her friends howled with laughter. I remained silent. The next day, she woke up expecting breakfast in bed. Instead, she got a shattered relationship. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the words I'd just overheard, or the realization that I'd ignored every red flag over the past 8 years. We were supposed to be getting married in just a few days, but now, I was staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. trying to convince myself that the life I'd built was somehow still real. Lydia hadn't come home yet. Her bachelorette party was supposed to end hours ago. I had no idea where she was, or more accurately, I didn't want to know. I picked up my phone, half expecting a drunk text or a blurry selfie from the night's festivities. Instead, I found something far worse. A photo. Lydia was sitting on some guy's lap at Murphy's bar downtown. Her arms were wrapped around his neck, her face flushed from alcohol, and maybe something else, something I didn't want to name. The man's face was turned away, but I could still see enough. Expensive shirt, confident smile. The kind of guy who thought he owned every room he walked into. The caption read, "Last night of freedom. Thanks girls for the wildest bachelorette ever. Last night single." My hands shook as I stared at the photo, not just from anger but disbelief. 8 years together. 8 years of building a life, talking about the future, planning kids and mortgages, growing old together. And this was how she celebrated our upcoming marriage. I didn't think. I screenshot the image and, with trembling hands, posted it to my own Facebook page. I changed my relationship status to single, tagged everyone who mattered including her father, and let the storm begin. I didn't even have time to sit back before my phone exploded with notifications. Texts, comments, messages, it was all happening in real time. Friends, family, coworkers, everyone had something to say. Some supported me. Others were shocked, and most of them were just hungry for the drama. At 3:15 a.m., I heard Lydia's car in the driveway. She burst through the door like a hurricane. Still wearing her little black dress. Her makeup smeared. She looked nothing like the composed insurance executive I had fallen in love with. "What the heck is wrong with you, Eli?" she screamed, waving her phone at me. "Are you completely insane?" I was sitting at the kitchen table, watching the social media wildfire I just started unfold on my laptop. Our small town of Millbrook thrived on gossip, and I'd just given them the story of the year. Wrong with me. I stood up slowly. At 38, I had learned to control my temper through years of military service and running my own handyman business. But tonight, that control was hanging by a thread. I'm not the one grinding on strangers at my bachelorette party. It was just a joke. She threw her purse on the counter. "You're so insecure." It was harmless fun. Harmless. I pulled up the photo on my laptop and shoved the screen toward her. "This looks harmless to you." Lydia glanced at the image, her face going pale for just a second before the defiance returned, stronger than before. "You don't trust me after 8 years. That says everything about you." "Not me. Who is he?" "Nobody. Just some random guy at the bar. Sienna dared me to take a photo." It meant nothing. But there was something in her voice, the way her eyes darted away, the slight tremor in her hands, that told me she was lying. My phone rang, and her father's name flashed on the screen. I glanced at her, and she hissed, "Answer it." I put the phone on speaker. "Hello, Richard. What in God's name is going on?" His voice was ice cold. "I'm getting calls from half the town about some social media nonsense. Ask your daughter Lydia. Explain yourself now." She grabbed the phone from me, her voice shrill as she rushed to explain. "Daddy, it's nothing. Eli's having some kind of breakdown. The photo was just a silly joke. A joke that's now been shared 300 times. I said, my voice steady as I refreshed the page. The local news Facebook page just picked it up. "Congratulations, honey. You're famous." Lydia's face went white. I hit refresh again, and sure enough, the story had gone viral. "This is insane," she shouted, pacing back and forth. "You're ruining everything over nothing." "I'm ruining everything." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm not the one who decided to dry hump a stranger 3 days before our wedding." Richard's voice crackled through the phone. "That's enough, both of you. Lydia, come home. We'll discuss this like adults." After Lydia left, I sat in the kitchen, watching the story unfold. My mind raced. The more I thought about it, the more I realized there was something off about Lydia's reaction. Something that felt too extreme. Too defensive. And that man in the photo, there was something familiar about him. I didn't know why, but I was going to find out who he was. That's when I made a decision. This wasn't just about a cheating fiancé. This was bigger. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to let this go. Lydia didn't come home the night after the bachelorette party, and I didn't sleep. The room felt like it was closing in on me, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for some sign of what the hell was happening to my life. By the time her car pulled into the driveway at 3:30 a.m., I had gone through a dozen possible scenarios in my head. None of them made sense. But there she was, stepping out of her car with a confused look on her face. Her dress askew, makeup smudged. She didn't look like the composed woman I had been planning to marry for 8 years. I didn't say anything when she walked through the door. I just sat there at the kitchen table, staring at her, trying to calm the storm that was churning inside me. She threw her purse on the counter, her high heels clacking against the tiles as she stood there, looking at me, like she wasn't sure what she should do next. I could see the defensive look in her eyes. She was already preparing for a fight. "Are you serious?" she snapped, her voice shaky but loud. "You really went and did that?" I didn't answer immediately. I couldn't. I was still reeling from the image of her with that man at the bar, her arms wrapped around him, her face flushed with excitement. The worst part. The photo was just the tip of the iceberg. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was everything I had been blind to. The lies, the secretive late nights, the shifting behavior. This wasn't just some drunken mistake at a bachelorette party. This was months of deception. "You posted it, Ellie," she said, her voice rising in pitch. "You went on Facebook and humiliated me in front of everyone. My father is furious. Our friends are talking. Don't talk to me about humiliation." I cut in, standing up. I was done with the silence. Done with letting her think I was going to swallow her excuses. "You were the one who humiliated me, not just with that photo, but with everything, the lies, the secrecy." Her face twisted in anger. "This is insane. It was nothing, just a joke." I stepped closer, my pulse pounding in my ears. "A joke?" I asked, my voice low and steady despite the fire in my chest. "You think this is funny? You think I'm supposed to laugh about you grinding on some guy at your bachelorette party, while we're supposed to be getting married?" Lydia's eyes shifted, like she was looking for a way out of this conversation. She shrugged, trying to downplay it. "I don't know what you want from me. It was just a stupid night. Nothing happened. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I felt the rage simmering beneath my skin. She was still lying. She was still playing the victim. But something in her voice, the way she couldn't look me in the eye, told me everything I needed to know. I'd seen liars in my time, heard the shaky tone, the words that didn't match the eyes. I walked to the laptop on the kitchen table and opened the post I had made. The notifications were already rolling in. It was blowing up. "It's been shared 300 times already," I said, scrolling through the messages. "Do you think this is nothing? Do you think I'm just supposed to forget what you did?" She walked over to me, grabbed my phone, and held it up, trying to play it off like this was all just some misunderstanding. "You're crazy, Eli. You're ruining everything. You're ruining us." I laughed. There was no humor in it. "I'm not the one who decided to dry hump a stranger 3 days before our wedding." She flinched, but only for a moment. Then her face hardened. "You don't trust me after 8 years. You really think I'm the kind of person who would cheat on you?" "Who is he, Lydia?" I asked, my voice cutting through the tension. "Who is the guy in the photo? You keep dancing around it. Who is he?" Her lips pressed together in a thin line, and for a moment, I thought she was going to say something truthful. But she didn't. Instead, she turned her back on me, walking toward the counter where her purse sat. "It doesn't matter. It was nothing." I reached over and grabbed the phone from her hand. "That's not what this says. This doesn't say nothing. This says something else." She turned around to face me, her expression shifting from anger to something else, something cold. "I don't need to explain myself to you." I didn't give her a chance to say more. The phone buzzed again, and the screen lit up with another message, this time from her father. Richard, the most uptight, rigid man I'd ever known. The man who had always looked at me like I wasn't good enough for his daughter. I didn't wait for her to stop me. I put it on speaker. "Hello, Richard," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "What in God's name is going on?" His voice was a frigid knife. "I'm getting calls from half the town about some social media nonsense. Ask your daughter Lydia. Explain yourself now." I glanced at Lydia, whose face had gone ashen. She grabbed the phone from me, but she was too late. Her father's voice came through clearly on speaker. "Lydia, what is this? Explain it to me now." "It's nothing, Daddy," Lydia said quickly, her voice trying to maintain control. "Ali's just overreacting. The photo was just a joke. A joke that's been shared 300 times, I said, hitting refresh. The local news Facebook page just picked it up. "Congratulations, honey. You're famous." I could see the color drain from Lydia's face. Her eyes darted around the room, like she was trying to figure out how to control the situation. She grabbed the phone back from my hand. "What?" "No." She looked at me, then back at the phone. Her voice cracked. "This is insane. You're ruining everything over nothing. It was just one stupid mistake." I shook my head, my throat tightening. "I'm not the one who decided to lie and betray someone who loved them. You did that. Richard's voice crackled through the phone again, his tone icy. That's enough. Lydia, come home, we'll discuss this like adults. After Lydia left, I sat at the kitchen table, feeling the weight of the situation crushing me. The phone buzzed again with more notifications, but I couldn't bring myself to look. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me with an empty feeling I couldn't quite place. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. Lydia's reaction, too defensive, too panicked, wasn't normal. Something was off. There was more to this than I realized. I knew what I had to do next. I wasn't going to sit around and let her lie to me anymore. I needed to find out who this guy really was. I needed answers. And I was going to get them, no matter what it took. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. The screen lit up, but I didn't want to look. Not yet. I knew it would be more messages, more notifications, more people talking about me, Lydia, the photo, everything. I was already sick of it, but I picked up the phone anyway. It wasn't just the usual texts. The first thing I saw was a message from my old army buddy, Mike. The kind of message that would either be good news or bad news. I read it quickly. Dude, you broke the internet. Half the town's talking about it. The other half is sharing memes. Call me when you can. I'll buy you a drink. I stared at the screen for a moment, unsure what to think. It was all happening so fast. A part of me was numb shocked, but the other part, the part that wanted answers, couldn't sit still anymore. I needed to find out what was really going on. I didn't know how far this went, but I was done letting Lydia hide behind her lies. After a few minutes, I dragged myself out of bed. The sunlight was already creeping through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room. It was a typical morning in Millbrook, gray skies, a slight chill in the air, and the smell of wet leaves from last night's rain. But inside, my mind was anything but calm. I took a deep breath and started thinking about the next steps. I needed information. I needed to dig deeper into Lydia's life, into what she'd been hiding. But I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just confront her again. I needed to be patient. I needed to find the truth. That's when I remembered Sienna. Lydia's maid of honor. She had been close to Lydia for years. Maybe too close. If anyone knew what Lydia was really up to, it was probably Sienna. The problem was, I didn't know if she'd be willing to talk. But I was running out of options. I needed to take that risk. Before I could make the call, the doorbell rang. I froze for a second, trying to place who would be knocking at my door this early. When I opened it, I was greeted by Mrs. Carlin, my elderly neighbor. She had a casserole dish in her hands and a look on her face that could only be described as a mixture of pity and curiosity. Such a shame, dear, she said, bustling into the kitchen without waiting for an invitation. Though I have to say, I always wondered about that girl. Too ambitious if you ask me. I raised an eyebrow, not sure where this conversation was going. What do you mean? Oh, you know, Mrs. Carlin said, lowering her voice. Those late nights at the office, strange hours, don't you think? I'd often see her car leaving at 5:30 in the evening, and then it wouldn't come back until after 9 or 10. All that time away from home. It's just not right. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew Lydia worked late sometimes, but I hadn't really thought about it. I hadn't questioned it. But now, in the quiet of the morning, I couldn't ignore it anymore. That's when I realized how much I had been turning a blind eye to. There was more going on here than just one night of betrayal. I see, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Thanks for letting me know. Mrs. Carlin smiled, clearly pleased with herself. I just thought you should know. It's good to keep your eyes open, especially in a town like this. After she left, I sat in the kitchen for a while, turning the information over in my mind. Late nights at the office, a car coming and going at strange times. It all pointed to something, but I wasn't sure what yet. I needed answers, and there was only one person I could think of who might be able to help. He ran Ollie's bar downtown and had a knack for knowing everything that went on in town. If anyone knew the local gossip, it was Mike. He'd always been the kind of guy who was plugged into everything, even the things you didn't want to know. I grabbed my phone and shot him a text. Got a minute? Need to meet up. Something's not adding up. He replied almost instantly. Already clearing my schedule. Meet you at O'Malley's for lunch. I didn't waste any time. I needed to meet him. Now, by the time I got to O'Malley's, the place was nearly empty. The lunch crowd hadn't arrived yet, and I could hear the sound of the bartender cleaning glasses behind the counter. Mike was sitting at the end of the bar, a basket of wings in front of him, and a beer already in his hand. He waved me over, and I sat down beside him, the weight of the past 24 hours still hanging heavy on my chest. So, what's going on, man? Mike asked, his tone casual, but his eyes gave away his curiosity. He knew something was up. I showed him the photo. Look at this guy. Do you recognize him? Mike squinted at the screen, then his eyes widened. Holy crap, is that Troy Barron? Who's Troy Barron? Asked, my voice tight, Mike leaned in, lowering his voice. Regional manager at Hartwell Insurance. Richard's golden boy. Drives a BMW, acts like he owns the place. He comes in here sometimes with clients. Real smooth talker. He thinks he's God's gift to women. The pieces started clicking into place. Troy, Richard's golden boy. It was all coming together now. Troy. I said slowly, feeling the anger start to build in my chest. And you're telling me this guy is involved with Lydia? Mike looked at me, his expression serious now. I hate to say it, Ely, but if Lydia's messing around with Troy Barron, this is bigger than just cheating. That guy's her boss's boss. He's got connections and a lot of power. If this is real, this could blow up in ways you don't want to imagine. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process everything. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating fiancé. I was dealing with a betrayal that had ties to Lydia's work, her job, her future, her whole damn life. This was a mess. I need to know for sure. I said, determination creeping into my voice. I need to know how deep this goes. Mike nodded. Well, I've got a buddy who works at the insurance company. I can make a call. Might take a few days, but we'll get the details. I need to move faster than that, I said, already thinking ahead. I'm not waiting for anyone to give me answers. I'll handle this myself. Mike's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't try to stop me. You sure about that? I'm sure. The drive home felt longer than usual. As I sat behind the wheel, I thought about everything I'd learned in the past few hours. I thought about the late nights, the secret meetings, the lies. And I thought about Lydia, how I'd trusted her completely, how I'd believed in the future we were supposed to have together. But that future was gone now. All I had left was the truth. And I was going to find it. I spent the next few days in a fog of anger and confusion, trying to piece together everything I had learned. The photo from Lydia's bachelorette party had been the spark. But the more I dug, the more I realized that what I was dealing with went deeper than just a betrayal. The lies were everywhere, layered like a damn onion, each layer more painful than the last. I had reached out to Mike, and true to his word, he came through. He had a buddy who worked at Hartwell Insurance, the company where Lydia and Troy were both employed. Mike had made the call, and after a few days of pushing, he managed to get me some information. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start making some connections. That's when I decided I had to follow Lydia. I wasn't about to sit around waiting for more scraps of information to fall into my lap. If she was lying, I was going to find out exactly where she was going and who she was seeing. The following Thursday, I parked across the street from her office, building around 5:30 in the evening. The air had a crisp bite to it, the kind of chill that made you want to hurry inside to the warmth. I could see the lights flickering inside her office, the soft hum of the fluorescent bulbs breaking the quiet of the night. I checked my watch, 5:30. Lydia was usually the last one to leave the office, the workaholic who couldn't seem to stop. Sure enough, just as the clock struck 5:30, I saw her figure moving toward the door. She stepped outside, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. But something was different that night. She wasn't headed to her car. Instead, she turned left, heading toward the parking lot behind the office. I squinted, trying to figure out where she was going. The lights from the street lamp illuminated the path, just enough for me to see her slipping into the parking garage. I waited for a few moments, my heart pounding in my chest. What the hell was she doing? It was as if everything I thought I knew was being shattered in front of me. The woman I was supposed to marry, the woman I had trusted, was slipping away into the darkness. And then I saw it, the car. It was a sleek black BMW, parked near the back of the garage. I didn't need to see who was in the driver's seat to know it was him. Troy Barron. The man from the photo. The man who had been in my life without me even realizing it. The man who had been betraying me, lying to my face. I felt the anger rise up in me, a steady heat that burned through my veins. Lydia walked straight to the car, and without hesitation, she climbed into the passenger seat. For a moment, I just watched them. The way they leaned in toward each other, their heads close together. My stomach turned. They weren't just talking. They weren't just friends. They were something else. Something I wasn't supposed to see. I had no idea how long they'd been seeing each other, but I knew one thing for sure. They weren't planning to stop. The BM pulled out of the parking lot and drove off down the street. Lydia sitting there beside him, her head resting on the window as they sped toward downtown. I hesitated for a moment, unsure whether I should follow them. My mind raced, but my body was already in motion, my hands gripping the steering wheel as I started the car, and followed at a distance. The city lights blurred in the background as I trailed them through the streets. Every turn they made felt like a punch in the gut. They drove for almost 20 minutes, heading toward the Riverside apartments. The expensive high-rise by the waterfront. The kind of place people like Troy and Lydia were drawn to. I pulled into the parking lot across the street, and parked behind a row of cars. From here, I could see the entrance to the building, a sleek, modern glass door that reflected the streetlights. I watched as they pulled into the lot and parked near the entrance. Lydia got out of the car first, followed by Troy. He opened the door for her, and they walked inside together. My jaw clenched. There was no denying it now. I wasn't just dealing with a one-time mistake. This wasn't some drunken lapse in judgment. Lydia had been seeing him for months, lying to me while planning our future. I had spent years building a life with her, and she had been planning to destroy everything for a man who didn't even care about her. I sat there for a long time, my mind racing as I watched them disappear into the building. My hands were shaking. The reality of what I was seeing hit me hard. This wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. This was about my future, my pride, everything I had believed in, crashing down all at once. I waited for another 20 minutes before I finally started my car and drove back home. The drive felt like it took forever, but I couldn't bring myself to think about anything else. I needed more information. I needed to know everything, even if it destroyed me to learn it. When I got home, I called Darius. He was the only one I could trust with this. My old army buddy who ran the security company. If anyone could dig up the dirt on Troy, it was him. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I need help, I said when he answered. I need you to find out everything about Troy Barron. How long he's been seeing Lydia, what he's been telling her. Sounds like you've already got most of the story, Ellie, Darius said. But I'll get on it. Give me 48 hours. I don't have that long, I replied. I need to know everything right now. I'm not waiting around for her to tear my life apart, any more than she already has. I'll get it done, he said, his voice serious. I'll call you with the details. I hung up the phone and sat there for a while, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. Lydia, Troy, everyone who'd been involved, they were all going to pay for what they'd done. They had no idea what was coming next. I wasn't the same man I had been before. The quiet, dependable guy who had been willing to overlook things, who had trusted Lydia with everything. That man was gone now. And the new version of me. He was out for blood. The next morning, Darius called with the details. I could hear the tension in his voice, the kind that comes when you're sitting on something big. Got everything you asked for, he said. And then some. I leaned forward in my chair, the weight of the past few days pressing heavily on me. Give it to me straight, Darius. How deep does this go? He didn't hesitate. Lydia's been seeing Troy for 6 months. It started at that company retreat. She told him it was just physical, that she still loved you but needed some excitement. But it's more than that. She's not just his side piece ally. She's all in. And Troy, well, he's been feeding her the dream, promises of leaving his wife. Claims he's going to get a big promotion and make a clean break. I sat back, trying to process what he was saying. 6 months, that's how long they had been hiding this. 6 months of betrayal, and I had no idea. I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Troy's a piece of work, Ellie. He's been telling Lydia that he's getting promoted to vice president, that he'll finally be able to leave his wife. But I did some digging into his finances. The guy's drowning in debt, mortgages, tuition, you name it. He's not leaving his wife anytime soon. He's using Lydia for the thrill, but he's not going anywhere. It's just one big lie. My heart sank. This wasn't just a betrayal of me. This was a game for Troy, and Lydia was the pawn. A pawn who didn't even know she was being played. And Lydia? I asked. She knows all of this. Darius sighed. She might not know the full extent, but she's been looking at apartments. She's planning to move in with him once your wedding falls apart. And I found something else. She's been using her credit card to pay for hotel stays, dinners, gifts, even lingerie. She's not covering her tracks well. She's all in a lie. She's already planning her future with him. The anger in my chest bubbled up again, hotter than before. This wasn't just about a one-night mistake. It was a full-on affair, planned out over months, with Lydia actively preparing to leave me for this guy. Is there anything else? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Darius paused before answering. There's something else I found out about Troy. Word is, he's done this before. He has a history of getting involved with women, making promises, then disappearing once things get complicated. He's a master at it. It's like a game to him. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a one-off betrayal. This was a pattern for Troy. He'd done this before, and he was doing it again, this time with Lydia. I want everything you've got, I said, my voice firm. Send me the receipts, the messages, everything. Consider it done. Darius replied. As I hung up the phone, the weight of the situation started to sink in. I had been blind. I had trusted Lydia with everything, my heart, my future, and she had been planning her exit the entire time. And Troy? He was just a manipulative asshole who got off on stringing women along. I felt like a fool. But that wasn't going to last long. I wasn't going to sit around and let this happen. I couldn't. I needed to confront Lydia. But this time, it was going to be different. I wasn't going to let her twist the truth. I wasn't going to let her make me feel like I was the crazy one. I grabbed my phone and opened the text from Mike. "You good man?" It read. I typed back, "Not yet, but I will be." I didn't know what came next. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going to back down. Lydia, Troy, and all the people who had lied to me were going to get a dose of reality. They had no idea what they were up against. The next few days felt like an eternity. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting, but the more I uncovered, the more I realized that I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, fighting to expose the lies they had wrapped around me like a noose. I sat in my kitchen late one night, reviewing everything Darius had sent me. Receipts from the hotel, credit card statements, text message screenshots. It was all there, laid out in front of me. I felt a sickening wave of anger flood my system, as I went through each piece of evidence. There it was, clear as day. Lydia had been seeing Troy behind my back for months. I couldn't believe it. The woman I was going to marry, the woman I had built my life with, had been living a double life. It wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal of everything I believed in. But as the anger surged through me, something else stirred deep inside. A calm resolve. I wasn't just going to let this go. I was going to make sure everyone knew what Lydia and Troy had done. I wasn't going to be the victim. I was going to make them regret ever crossing me. The next morning, I called Darius. "I need you to find out everything about Lydia's history with Troy. How long has he been using the same line on women? What else can we dig up on him?" "I'm already on it," Darius replied. "But be careful, Eli. This is bigger than you think." "I know," I said, my voice low. "I'm ready." I wasn't sure what was coming next, but one thing was certain. The truth was coming out, and I was going to be the one to make sure of it. I didn't waste any time. The minute Darius called and confirmed what I already suspected, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let Lydia and Troy think they could get away with this. I was done sitting in the dark, just watching everything fall apart. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed control. The truth had already been ripped away from me. Now it was time to rip their lies apart. I called Mike early the next morning. "You busy?" I asked, my voice clipped. "Never too busy for you," he replied, his tone light, but I could tell he knew something was coming. "I need to meet with you," I said, my voice more serious than usual. "Today noon, O'Malley's." He hesitated for a moment. "You got it, I'll be there." I had a plan, and it was coming together faster than I anticipated. I was going to confront Troy. Not in some public place, not in front of Lydia, but one-on-one. I needed him to understand that this wasn't just about me and Lydia anymore. This was about him being exposed, about him losing everything, just like I had. The only difference was, I wasn't going to let him walk away with his life intact. By noon, I was sitting at the bar, nursing a beer while Mike set out a basket of wings in front of me. The place was mostly empty, just a few regulars sitting at the far end, keeping to themselves. The low hum of conversation mixed with the clinking of glasses, and the familiar smell of fried food and spilled beer filled the air. It was the kind of place that felt like home, even when things were falling apart. Mike slid into the seat next to me, his expression serious. "What's going on, man?" "I need you to do something for me," I said, not wasting any time. "I'm meeting with Troy today." Mike looked at me, his brows furrowing. "Meeting with Troy? What for?" "I'm going to make him understand exactly how deep this goes. And I need your help." I pushed my phone across the table, showing him the messages and hotel receipts. "I need to make sure this is airtight. No loopholes, no way out." Mike stared at the screen for a moment before nodding. "All right. What do you need me to do?" "I need you to keep an eye on Lydia. If she tries anything, if she contacts Troy or tries to spin this in her favor, I want to know." Mike let out a long breath, his eyes narrowing. "You know, this is getting real messy. You're talking about taking down her whole life. You sure you're ready for that?" I nodded, the weight of everything pressing down on me. "I don't have a choice anymore. I've been living a lie for too long. It's time to put a stop to it." He didn't say anything for a moment, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. "All right. I'll keep an eye on her. But be careful with Troy. That guy doesn't strike me as someone who's going to take being cornered well." "I'm counting on that," I said, my jaw tightening. "I'll be careful. But this ends today." We talked for a little while longer, hammering out the details. Mike was solid as always, but I could tell he was worried. I didn't blame him. The truth is I was too. This wasn't just about confronting Troy. This was about everything Lydia had hidden from me for months. Everything she had built in secret, planning her escape while I was none the wiser. By the time I left O'Malley's, my head was clearer. I knew what I had to do. I drove straight to Riverside Apartments, parked across the street, and waited. The sun had started to dip low in the sky, casting an orange glow over the water. The air was cool. The kind of evening where the wind made the leaves rustle softly, the sounds of the city muted in the distance. I kept my eyes fixed on the building across the street. It was quiet now, but I knew the moment I saw that black BMW pull in, everything was about to change. I wasn't sure how long I'd been sitting there when I finally saw it. Troy's BMW, turning into the parking lot with Lydia beside him. The sight of her, sitting so comfortably next to him, made my blood boil. How long had this been going on? How many nights had she spent with him while I was waiting at home? Thinking everything was fine, I waited a few minutes before I got out of my car, and walked across the street. The wind cut through me, the chill settling into my bones, but I didn't care. I was too focused on what was coming next. I reached the entrance of the apartment complex, just as Troy was about to head inside. He didn't see me at first, but as I stepped forward, he froze. I could see his expression shift as he recognized me. "A lie," he said, his voice calm but guarded. "What's going on?" I didn't waste any time. "We need to talk." Troy raised an eyebrow, his confident smirk barely noticeable. "Talk about what?" "About you and Lydia. About your little affair. I think it's time for you to face the consequences," I said, my voice low and steady. Troy's smile faltered for a moment, but it quickly returned, even more arrogant than before. "Listen, man. I don't know what you think you know, but I don't have time for this." "You're going to make time," I said, stepping closer. "You see, I've got everything. Hotel receipts, text messages, Lydia's credit card statements. I know everything about your little game." His eyes flickered for a moment, but then he tried to play it off. "You think this is going to scare me? You think I'm going to back down just because you're upset?" I didn't say anything. I just pulled out my phone and showed him the draft email. The one I was ready to send to Richard, his boss, and Lydia's father. The one that would expose everything. "Last chance, Troy," I said, my voice colder now. "You can walk away, and I'll keep this to myself. Or you can refuse, and I'll send this out. Your choice." Troy swallowed hard, his bravado slipping away. He glanced at the phone, then back at me. "You wouldn't," I said, my voice calm and lethal. Troy took a step back, his face pale. I knew I had him. Before he could say anything, I turned and walked away. I'd given him a choice. And he knew exactly what that choice meant. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't help but feel a rush of satisfaction. This was just the beginning. The truth was finally coming to light, and no one was going to stop me now. The fall festival was in full swing when I arrived. The air was thick with the smell of caramel apples, hot dogs and fried dough. The sound of laughter and conversation swirled around me, blending with the lively music from a local band playing near the stage. People wandered from booth to booth, some sampling the food, others playing games or watching kids run around with balloons. It looked like any other fall festival, but for me, it was the calm before the storm. I stood by the food trucks, my mind racing. I'd spent the last few days digging through every piece of evidence. I had hotel receipts, credit card statements, text messages, all of it pointed to Lydia's betrayal. But it wasn't just about her anymore. Troy, the smooth, talking salesman, had used his charm and lies to manipulate her. And I wasn't going to let either of them get away with it. Mike had sent me a message earlier that morning. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Yes." So I had replied simply. "I'm sure. I needed this. I needed to confront them both in front of everyone. Lydia, Troy, all the people who'd judged me without knowing the full story. Tonight, I was going to set things straight. I wasn't the villain in this story. I wasn't the one who had torn apart everything we'd built. They were. I spotted Dave, Tom and Mark almost immediately. They were standing near the apple cider booth, looking out over the crowd, their voices carrying above the noise. They didn't see me at first, but I could hear them. Their conversation was about me, no doubt, and from the tone of their voices, they weren't defending me. In fact, it sounded like they were still playing the part of Lydia's protectors, spinning their own version of events. I felt the old anger flare up inside me, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't here for them. I was here to make sure Troy and Lydia understood what it meant to destroy someone's life and walk away unscathed. I walked over to the stage where the band was finishing their set. The crowd was starting to thin out as the music died down, the night air growing colder. I spotted Betty Walsh, the festival organizer, standing near the stage with a clipboard in hand, checking off some last-minute details. "Betty, can I borrow the microphone for a minute?" I asked, my voice steady. She looked at me for a moment, then nodded, probably recognizing the determination in my eyes. "Sure, honey. You want to make an announcement?" "Something like that," I replied, not breaking my stride as I climbed up onto the stage. The crowd was starting to gather, a few curious faces turning toward me as I took the mic. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" I called out, my voice carrying through the speakers. The crowd slowly turned toward the stage, the noise of the festival quieting just enough to hear me. I could see Dave, Tom, and Mark pushing through the crowd, realizing what was happening but unable to stop it. Lydia was somewhere in the distance, but I didn't care. She would hear me, just like everyone else. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ali Griffin. I've lived in this town my whole life, and I've always tried to treat people with honesty and respect. I began, keeping my voice calm but firm. Recently, some people have been spreading stories about me, calling me unstable, violent, a bad friend. So, I thought I'd take this opportunity to set the record straight. The crowd was dead silent now. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for whatever came next. This was it. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the sound system. I saw the moment Dave, Tom, and Mark recognized what was about to happen. Their eyes widened as they pushed forward, trying to make their way to the stage, but it was too late. I hit play. The first recording blasted through the speakers. Dave's voice, unmistakable, discussing a drug deal in Portland. He was talking about buying pills, talking about quantities and prices. The crowd murmured as Dave's voice echoed through the speakers. But I could see his face go white. His eyes darted to the others, trying to regain control, but it was slipping fast. "This is Dave Morrison," I continued, my voice calm but cutting through the tension. "This is him arranging to buy hard drugs. The same Dave who's been spreading lies about me, calling me unstable. Who's the real villain here?" The crowd reacted immediately. People started whispering, pulling out their phones, recording the audio, sharing it with their friends. The air seemed to thicken as the truth hit them. I clicked to the next recording. It was Tom's voice this time, laughing about how he'd been hiding his affair with his secretary. The recording was clear, his words casual, almost arrogant. He was talking about how to keep his wife in the dark, about sneaking around behind her back while she stayed at home, clueless. I saw Susan Bradley standing in the crowd, her face going from shock to disbelief as Tom's voice filled the square. She looked around, trying to make sense of what was happening, but there was no escaping it. "And this is Tom Bradley," I said louder this time. "The man who thinks he can cheat on his wife and get away with it. All while calling me a bad friend. The truth's been hiding in plain sight, people." I didn't pause for a reaction. I clicked to the final recording. Mark's voice rang out next, talking about how he'd been embezzling money from his construction company to pay off his gambling debts. He was laughing about it, as though it was nothing more than a minor mistake, a casual issue he could easily brush under the rug. I could hear gasps from the crowd now. The shock was palpable, the weight of the evidence settling over everyone. "And this," I said, looking out over the crowd, "is Mark Chen, the man who's been stealing from his own company, all while pretending to be a saint. How's that for hypocrisy?" The crowd was buzzing now, phones flashing, whispers filling the air. I could see Dave, Tom, and Mark trying to push their way through the crowd, but they were too late. It was over. They were exposed. "And these," I said, pausing for a moment, "are the people who've been calling me unstable. Each are the people who've been spreading lies about me and my relationship. But the truth is, they're the ones with blood on their hands. They're the ones who've been destroying lives while pretending to be innocent." I unplugged my phone and stepped off the stage. The crowd parted for me as I walked through, the murmurs continuing, the weight of the truth settling on everyone around me. I didn't look back. Lydia was standing near the cider stand, her face pale, her eyes wide. She had seen everything. She knew everything. And I knew exactly what was coming next. I walked up to her, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hello, Lydia," I said, my voice low. She stared at me frozen, as though she couldn't believe what had just happened. "I have something for you," I said, pulling an envelope from my pocket. I handed it to her, and she opened it slowly, her hands trembling. Inside were photos of Troy, his wife and kids at Disney World last weekend. The photos I had paid to have taken. The photos that showed the truth. Troy hadn't been ruined by the scandal. He'd used it to disappear, to take his family and run. Lydia looked at the photos, her face crumbling as the reality set in. "How did you?" "I hired a private investigator," I said, my voice quiet but final. "Troy's out. Troy's done this before. He's been lying to you, just like he lied to every other woman he's used." Lydia's face crumpled, the mask of defiance cracking for the first time. I thought he loved me." "No," I said, shaking my head. "You were just another game to him." I turned and walked away, leaving her there in the middle of the square, surrounded by the crowd that had just witnessed her humiliation. As I walked toward my truck, I heard the sirens approaching, but I wasn't worried. I had video footage, witnesses, and everything I needed to prove that I hadn't done anything wrong. The fight was over. The truth had been set free, and I had won. The following week, the town of Millbrook was buzzing. The echoes of the fall festival still rang in the air, and the fallout from that night was far from over. I had made my peace with the way things had unfolded, but the consequences were still rippling out, one by one, affecting everyone involved. Troy. Rumors swirled that his wife had kicked him out, that he'd fled to a motel somewhere in another state, desperate to escape the fallout of his lies. The truth had exposed him, stripped away the perfect facade he had built for years. He'd vanished from town as quickly as he'd arrived. His job at Hartwell Insurance was gone, his reputation in tatters. And that was just the beginning. Lydia, on the other hand, had returned to her father's house. Richard Hartwell, once so proud of his daughter's success, was now keeping her at arm's length. I could feel his embarrassment from here, his disappointment seeping through every word. He spoke whenever his name came up in conversation. Lydia had tried to patch things up with him, but there was no salvaging what she had done. She had been caught in her lies, and there was no going back. I'd expected her to call, to try and apologize, to beg me for another chance. But she didn't. I think, in the end, she knew it was over. There was nothing left for her to say, no more stories to spin. Her life had unraveled in front of her, and now she was left to pick up the pieces, just like me. But I wasn't interested in picking up anything that had been broken by her. The most surprising part of it all wasn't the fallout from Lydia or Troy, though. It wasn't the way the town had whispered about me, or the fact that people I'd called friends had turned their backs. It was the phone call I received from Mike, a few days after the festival. "Hey man, you alright?" he asked, his voice unusually soft. "I heard you've been getting a lot of calls from, well, everyone." "I'm fine," I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. "Just getting used to being the town's new celebrity." "Yeah, I heard about that fight at the festival," he continued. "You know, a lot of people don't get it. They don't understand what you were doing. They see the drama, the spectacle. They don't see the truth behind it." "Does it matter?" I asked, sitting down on the couch. "It's over. They know the truth. Lydia knows. Troy knows." Mike paused for a moment, his voice almost hesitant when he spoke again. "Yeah, but that's not the whole story, Ellie. You know that, right?" I raised an eyebrow, unsure where he was going with this. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Mike said, "it's not just about the betrayal. It's about how you handled it. You didn't just let it happen. You took control. And that's something not a lot of people do. Most people would have just let it slide. You didn't." I felt a lump form in my throat as the weight of his words hit me. I had been angry, consumed by rage. But he was right. What I had done wasn't just about vengeance. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about proving that I wouldn't stand by and let my life be ruined by someone else's lies. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about Lydia, or Troy, or even the town of Millbrook. This was about me. About who I was becoming. The quiet handyman, the guy who had always done the right thing, had been pushed too far. And now, I wasn't that person anymore. I had become someone else, someone stronger, someone who wouldn't let anyone walk all over him. "You did what you had to do," Mike continued. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I've got your back always." I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. The weight of everything I had been carrying, Lydia's betrayal, the lies, the anger was starting to lift. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I had already done it. I had exposed the truth. I had fought back, and in the end, I had won. That afternoon, I went for a walk through the park. It was quiet, just the way I liked it. The trees had started to shed their leaves, and the air smelled like damp earth and the faint trace of wood smoke from someone's fireplace. I walked slowly, letting the silence settle around me. As I passed the old oak tree, I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't turn around at first, but when I did, I saw her, Lydia. She was standing a few feet away, looking unsure of herself. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. She looked nothing like the confident woman I had once known. I didn't know if I should come," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I had to see you." I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. There was nothing left between us anymore. Nothing she could say would change what had happened. And honestly, I didn't want to hear it. "I'm sorry, Ellie," she said, her eyes searching mine for something, some sign that I would take her back, that I would forgive her. But I didn't feel that. Not anymore. "I know," I said, my voice firm but calm, "but it's too late." She nodded, her shoulders slumping as though she had expected this, but didn't want to admit it. "I never meant for it to happen this way." I shook my head. "You did, Lydia. You didn't just make a mistake, you made a choice. And now we both have to live with the consequences." She was quiet for a moment, her eyes downcast. I could see the tears she was holding back, but I didn't feel pity. I had shed enough tears over her. Now it was time to move forward. "I guess this is goodbye," then she whispered. I nodded, stepping back slightly. "Goodbye, Lydia." As she walked away, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. She had been a part of my life for so long, but that part of my life was over now. It was time to move on. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would still be whispers in the town, still people who didn't understand. But I didn't care anymore. I had reclaimed my life, and I was ready to start over. For the first time in months, I felt free.